Hello, you are listening to the Never Heard of It podcast. I'm Shawn Harwell.
And I'm Craig Moorhead, and this is the podcast where we talk about all the movies that have slipped through our cracks.
That's indeed right. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter at Never Podcast, and you can check out our very own beautiful website, which is neverheardpodcast.com.
It's really quite a destination website. Kind of really can't help but end up there.
Yeah. I mean, if you Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah, and Google will break, probably.
No lie.
Yeah.
And please come find us and keep making suggestions.
Yeah, shout-outs to our listeners in Asia, in Africa. We've almost reached at least one listen on every continent right now.
Yeah, I'm still holding out hope for North Korea.
I feel like we're pop culture enough to catch on there, but we'll see.
Well, I just worry about their internet. With that in mind, let's do this, yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, today we are going back in time a little bit and talking about I think this has got to be the first movie we've talked about that was made before even 1970, I think.
Yeah, I think 70 is the earliest one so far.
Yeah, so we're going way back further than that. The movie is Caught, 1949 drama, film noir, thriller. It falls under that umbrella, apparently, according to IMDb. I would call it a drama.
Yeah,
if you're going expecting a crime film noir, you're going to be a little disappointed here. That said, there's some cool stuff in this one. It stars James Mason, Barbara Bel Geddes, and Robert Ryan, and was directed by Max Ophuls and written by Arthur Laurents, based on the Libby Block novel. Craig, I will do you a synopsis, courtesy of Wikipedia this time.
Thank you.
And there's more on their synopsis than I'm actually going to give, so this is half of a two-paragraph synopsis. Okay. Young model Leonora Ames, played by Barbara Bel Geddes, marries multi-millionaire Smith Ulrich, played by Robert Ryan. Ulrich, though, is deranged and did not marry for love. Ames insists several times that she did marry for love, but the film suggests that she is deluding herself. When Ulrich becomes too abusive, she leaves him penniless to find a job at a medical clinic in a poor neighborhood and eventually falls for Dr. Larry Quinata, played by James Mason.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think that's about right for a good half of the movie. And then,
sure.
You get some fireworks towards the ends there. So, Craig.
Yeah.
What did you think you were getting into? I know, listening to it again, you had trouble understanding what the hell word I was saying when I said caught because, sometimes my southern accent wants to add like 4 syllables to every word. And I think I tipped the hat a little bit that this, yes, was a bit of an older movie, but any notion as to what you were getting into here with this one?
I did a little bit. I did look up the poster before I watched it.
Uh-huh.
I've kind of loosened up on that a little bit, as far as like not knowing anything going in, just because I wanted to make sure I had some clue of I was going to watch the right movie. There are plenty of movies called Caught.
Yeah. And actually, that poster has a pretty great little tagline. I'm looking at it now. It says, "The story of a desperate girl." And I like that. And it's kind of accurate.
Yeah. So what I thought I was getting into, so Shawn suggested the movie Jamaica Inn after one of our podcasts, and that sounded great to me. I'd never heard of it, but then it turned out that movie was not available anymore the way we thought that it would. So that's been cut. Maybe we'll come back to it again some other time, but that was a Hitchcock movie, as I remember, right?
It was, and I had never...
No, I've never heard of it, and I've heard about a lot of his, more sort of left turn type movies, and I've never heard of that. But when you suggested this one and you said it was 1949, in my mind it just sort of set up, either this is another Hitchcock movie or it's going to be kind of a dark, mysterious type movie, which ended up not being half wrong. But I was very excited to see that James Mason and Barbara Bel Geddes was in it. Robert Ryan is no slouch either.
Correct.
So, I have to say, after sitting down and starting it, I was tremendously happy. I wish there was maybe a better version of it, better looking version.
That said, I don't think it's definitely not the worst we've done.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's
very,
stretch.
very, very watchable. If anything, it just looks like you're watching something that's standard def on a high def You know what I mean?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So Shawn,
That's correct.
how did this pop up on your radar?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I think this was pretty well spread. I'm looking at it and I don't see the date right now. Oh, I think maybe 2012. Okay. Scorsese did a very long interview with Fast Company, which is some sort of business magazine, I believe. And in it, he kind of laid out 85 movies that he kind of considered the movies that any sort of like filmmaker or film fan should see, basically. As you might guess, there are not many post 1990. I think like Altman's The Player and like one other movie make it on that list. And I have kind of I copied this list, I think, in IMDb and made my own, just sort of version of it to have it with my profile. And like as I watch, movies, like every now and then, I'm like, oh, you know what, I need to watch something off of this Scorsese list. Because, we both went to film school. It doesn't mean we've seen everything. And certainly my sort of knowledge of, this pre-60 era is kind of limited to the stuff that I think every sort of like moderate film fan has seen. And so I'll read you exactly what he said about this movie. He said, there are certain styles I had trouble with at first, like some of Max Ophuls' films. It took me till I was into my 30s to get The Earrings of Madame De, another very famous Ophuls movie. But I didn't have trouble with this one, which I saw in a theater and which is kind of based on Howard Hughes, who, of course, Scorsese made a movie about called The Aviator. And so that was on my radar. And then not long ago, I think Criterion also put out The Earrings of Madame De, and I was able to catch that on Hulu and really enjoyed it. I also had seen a clip of Paul Thomas Anderson talking about the camera movement in that movie, and in particular, Ophuls, I think, is known as sort of this like fluid movement master.
And that was, fairly clear from what we saw in Caught.
Very much so. And like, in fact, The Earrings of Madame De is 1962. This is 49. So this is way, way ahead of that. And there's some amazing, amazing movements, which we'll get to. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of embarrassed to say I didn't know that was the case. I had heard of Ophuls, but I didn't know any of his movies. And he's a really interesting guy. And then he was born in Germany, and he's made movies in Germany, France, America, I think in all three languages and probably elsewhere. But he kind of came over and was looking for a very early film job and ended up working under Preston Sturges, who was producing a movie for Howard Hughes called Vendetta. And this, I think was, if you remember The Aviator, I think this was post airplane crash in the cornfield or whatever like that. Right. So he's like making this movie, and of course he's got his, actress, the woman that he thinks should be an actress just because he's in love with her and wants to put her on the big screen, and he's pushing her in this role and the lead in this movie. And Ophuls starts shooting it, and Howard Hughes does not like the pace at which he's going. And then, I guess is quoted as saying he didn't want foreigners working for California Pictures. And so he first forced Preston Sturges to fire Max Ophuls. And so 3 years later, Max Ophuls made this movie that we're talking about. And yeah, as soon as I knew that this was somewhat of a Howard Hughes thing, I thought, okay, I see a little bit of the overlap with what little I know about Hughes, primarily from The Aviator, and it's really kind of interesting. And I also think, I just, again, sorry, but we're probably going to reference a lot of current movies and stuff that's, more from this era just to kind of help us talk about this thing, because otherwise, I just, again, my knowledge is limited. I see a little bit of Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood, or bits and pieces from The Master, and even I think The Earrings of Madame De. There's a Madame De sort of reference in Wes Anderson's Grand Budapest Hotel. So obviously, I think this is a filmmaker that you and I should have heard of.
I was excited that this was kind of our assignment this time, in a way. I like how you go back and you watch stuff from this time, and everything is so formal in the way everyone does everything. So, so much like we keep getting sort of more and more casual with filmmaking, or most of the tone of a lot of movies we watch, because people just going for as much reality as they can and so on. Generally,
yeah,
and it's kind of fun to go back to a time where it's just so formal. Like none of this comes off as real at all. It's a very much a melodrama.
Yeah,
and it's just one of those movies, I guess.
And did you like it?
I did. I enjoyed it very much.
I did too.
And a lot of that was, for a lot of the time I was watching it, I wasn't sure where it was going. Okay, the movie's called Caught, and I naturally assume there are three main actors, two are dudes. So I'm thinking somebody gets murdered, the other two plot to murder the other one, and then they get caught. Right. That's what this is about. So it's going to be a lot of like intrigue and conspiracy, and there's going to be someone's going to end up dead and all that stuff. And that's not at all really what you get.
No, nobody does.
This definitely feels like, and I did not know it was based on a novel before I watched it, but toward the end, it felt like this was based on a book. Like this does not feel like your standard movie. This doesn't feel like the way movies normally move.
Right, and let me get into that a little bit by way of giving some examples and just kind of easing people into the plot a little bit. We're opening, really kind of interesting opening. They're using like a fashion magazine as a backdrop for the title credits, and then once the credits are done, you're moving right into that fashion magazine, and the pages are being turned, and there's two girls. You're hearing them, you're not seeing them yet, but they're kind of talking about, wishful thinking. The stuff that they want from the magazine, the life that they want. We find out they're in a New York apartment. Leonora, who's that's not even her real name, right? It's crap. I wrote it down. Maud. Maud is her real name, which I think is also just like, okay, yeah, that's like representational of like an older woman, so they're still, even in 49, that was like an old name, which I like. But they're basically, these two women work as, I think maybe in the synopsis it says models. What that means in this instance is they work at a department store and they walk around in the clothes that the store is selling to try and entice people to buy these clothes, right?
And that's fascinating.
It's totally fascinating. And I'm kind of curious. A, I'm assuming it has stopped somewhat completely. And B, sort of when that happened and why exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's obviously a little bit of objectification going on, in particular when Maud comes back at one point and she's wearing a fur, and like that, there's a dude asking to see the lining, and clearly he just kind of wants to look at her body. But yeah, it's a really sort of interesting occupation that I guess was a big opportunity for women who were not born into wealth to go work in these stores. And this is a lot of what this movie, the setup is about, is you have to do this because where else are you going to meet a man that can afford to get you out of this very tiny New York apartment? Yeah. And one of the things that goes along with that when you're talking about being formal is these girls the older woman, the older roommate, who I can't even remember her name, but she's a very small role, is talking to Maud, who has just sort of started charm school, Dorothy Dale's charm school. And that is described as being like finishing school and college combined, is the line of dialogue. That in itself just threw me for such a curve, because I thought maybe we were going to get a romantic comedy of some sort. And yet, like you, I'm wrestling with the title of this movie, because how does this translate to what I'm seeing and just the tone of it, the feel of it? She goes to this charm school and she's walking in, and you've got Dorothy Dale there saying, okay, full tones, speak with confidence, talk about your favorite type of fur, cross your legs, shake hands, like all these little etiquette things. And it's like, oh, this is, it's kind of charming and cute, and like, look what the world used to be like back then.
Yeah.
But really, we're back at that department store for 5 minutes before she meets a guy named Franzi, who's sort of got that kind of Peter Lorre kind of vibe, He's sort of like one of those little
he's the
smarmy
skeezy sidekick.
Yeah, he's got a pencil-thin mustache. I think he's French. speaks with an accent. He works for Smith Ulrich, the Robert Ryan character. He works for him as an assistant of some sort, and he's basically inviting her, because she's modeling a fur, to come to a yacht party thrown by Smith Ulrich. And again, like, once you sort of realize, oh, this is about Howard Hughes, that does sort of like seem in line with what you know about, like, how he meets women and stuff like that. And so he sort of forces his business card upon her, and I think even there is somewhat of a promise made of being paid to come to this party.
Yeah. That, or at least, he's saying, everyone knows why you're here modeling. Everyone knows why you went to charm school to model here. It's so that you could hit the big jackpot and, land a millionaire like Smith Ulrich. So, of course, you're going to come to this party. Like, stop pretending like you're not. And what's interesting is, at least I think it's interesting for especially this time period maybe, Leonora really finds that she doesn't like this.
Immediately.
She's gone to charm school and everything, but now that this has happened, she says that it makes her feel very cheap. It just feels like it's a business transaction where she sort of wants to marry a rich guy, but I think more than that, she wants to be in love with someone and have a happy life.
She does.
And a lot of that is wrapped up in being secure, which means you have to meet a rich guy, which means you have to go to charm school because otherwise you're not worth anything.
I was telling my wife, some of that thematically is it's a little like Jane Austen or something, It's like, will I marry for money or will I marry for love? And yes, is it okay for me to admit that there are things about that lifestyle, the wealthy lifestyle, that I do want,
right?
But not at the expense of an awful relationship, right?
Right.
And so, that's kind of like the crux of this entire movie. And then it becomes really interesting in that you see it reflected in the men as well and sort of how they deal with that. Again, this is all happening very quickly. She does indeed we're basically cutting to a dock. She's sitting there in the dark, and like, here's where I'm like, okay, it's getting kind of interesting. Like, there's a lot of fog out there, and here comes this boat into shore. She's been waiting, obviously, and this guy gets off the boat. Immediately that he's the guy that owns the yacht, right? Like, and again, I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. She's talking to this guy about how somebody was supposed to pick her up. Nobody came, and like, she didn't want to do this, but she's got to get out there and all this kind of thing. And it's like, okay, where is she going to put her foot in her mouth?
Right.
And how long is he going to like let the carrot dangle before he tells her, I'm the guy that owns the yacht, And, he basically asks her to come. He kind of forces her to come with him. He'll pay for the taxi cab. They'll come back and go out to the yacht party, but he's got to take care of some business first. And then they go for a ride, and and they end up going to his house, and he's basically like, come inside. We know why you're here. It's again that thing. It's like, you know what you signed up for. And she flat out refuses. Like, that's not the kind of girl she is. And one of the more interesting cuts from there that I totally would not have anticipated in a more modern movie is you then go to Smith Ulrich, who's on the couch with his shrink.
Yeah.
Talking about how this has now happened 3 or 4 times. So we're some time later where he's been courting this girl, Leonora, who in the car, he just seemed to have no interest. Interest beyond. He's just mean to. He's rude and like.
It didn't seem like, he cared if it was her or another girl. He clearly just wanted a girl to show up that night. He'd take her back and sleep with her. It seemed like that was just what he did. And I'd also like to mention that when he's driving her, he's awesome enough to have a captain's hat on.
Yes, he does have a captain's hat on, off and on.
Which and he takes it off when they get to the house, and when she tells him that she wants him to drive her home, he gets upset and he puts it back on, and then I just thought, I need a captain's hat.
And he flat out says, I'm not going to get married. Like, I put it off this long. I know what I'm doing. It's never going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
But again, like, my modern head is like, okay, foreshadow that change of heart. Like, when is he going to fall in love with her?
Such a sweet wedding when he softens and yeah.
But no,
that's not
you remember what happens in that scene with the shrink? It's so crazy. The shrink is basically calling him out for having what they sort of refer to as attacks, which are are kind of like a mix between a panic attack and a heart attack. Like,
Right.
you know, it's like, it's a little unclear.
Yeah.
But he's saying, like, this happens to you out of stress because you don't like to lose, you don't like to feel challenged, and you basically like to feel, you want to be superior
Right.
to everyone around you. And that is why you will not marry. And so Smith flips the freaking handle and is like, I am going to get married, and I'm going to marry Leonora. And it's like all out of spite. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, what is going on?
And
then-
he's doing that just to spite his therapist.
yes.
I mean, just because someone mentioned that he doesn't want to do one thing. Yeah, and the therapist
And that
just
thing
kind of
is
sits there and
marriage.
it's
That's
like,
a big thing.
You
Like,
realize you're just doing that just to spite me. And he's, "Rrr, yeah. And I would also like to point out again, another somewhat of a tangent, but in the same scene, something I couldn't stop looking at was the way he held his cigarette,
Yeah.
where he just had a clenched fist and a cigarette sort of poking out from between two of the knuckles.
There is
Like, interesting.
so much just rage and anger in that whole dude's performance. I think it's just seeping out of his body and stuff like that. I mean, we're talking fashion a little bit with the hat. In this scene, he's got the high-waisted short tie,
The short tie.
super short tie,
Yeah.
and that's a pretty cool look that you just
It
you're not
is.
gonna
If you can pull that
today.
off. Yeah, exactly.
No, you look like Paula Poundstone or something, or like you're doing like a clown act somewhere.
Yeah.
It won't work. So here again, I think is where we get one of those moments that moves a little bit like a novel because we're jumping quite a bit ahead. They are married. We use the standard classic newspaper headline montage to establish that, yes, they got married, and the fact that he married this girl is a big deal. And that it's kind of funny because one of the headlines is model nabs millionaire, which like today would be, yeah, so what? Like, you know, it's the other way around, right?
Yes. And there's one of those newspapers that has a great headline. I can't remember the exact headline, but I believe it's a photo of her mom.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, parents are thrilled that blah, blah. And
She always knew that her daughter.
yeah, she always knew her daughter could land a millionaire. And the photo of her mom just looks like the most miserable old woman.
Oh,
just
God,
kind of
she
sitting there
looks
like,
like,
ugh.
She looks like she's in the grapes of wrath in like a dust bowl somewhere, like foreclosing on her house.
Yeah, but the newspaper is so excited about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, mom is like, yeah, this sucks.
And so, yeah, we're thrown into that lifestyle now. She's living in the millionaire, you know, house. I think perhaps they are still in California at this point. She's out by the pool with that old roommate and saying immediately, you know, I'm not happy. I think my husband wishes he hadn't married me, and I don't blame him. I don't know how to fit into this world. I don't know how to behave like I have money. But she's very, very adamant that she did not marry for money. You know, unlike her roommate, no, that's not what she wanted. She could have never done that. She really does love him. You do not see any of that. No. That's all tell versus show. Like, we've seen nothing of their relationship to this point to almost even suggest that there is a relationship, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's showing you that she is sort of deluding herself, but it's so much just she's almost begging him to just be a nicer person so that maybe they could have a loving relationship.
Right.
Like, just, is there any way you could treat me like a human being and maybe we would actually like each other?
Well, and to this point, though, we've only seen them together in that car scene. So, you know, you honestly don't really quite know what kind of guy he is at this point, even. But it becomes very, very clear. We move time again, and then I think, we're in Long Island in a very large house. It's snowing. It's been months, and she's miserable at this point. And you get the very distinct impression that she's basically expected to stay home and be there at his whim when he gets home, which is often not until very, very late, and there's only like an hour or two where they're spending any amount of time together.
Right.
This definitely sort of struck me as that kind of Citizen Kane
Sure.
You're getting that kind of like relationship a little bit with these men of power of this era and these tycoons that have kind of built this world. I mean, I guess it's sort of, pointing a finger at capitalism too in a way.
So that's the bit where he comes home. He has a bunch of guys with him. He's going to show them this film about his company or something.
He's got a projector in the house. He's got a projectionist on call.
Right. He's definitely wound very tight.
Yeah.
Everyone is beneath him, and he treats them like that, including his wife. He comes home. He's demanding her to I don't know, get them food and come into the projection room and watch this. And at some point, she laughs at someone's joke in the background, some other guy's joke, and he just flips out.
Well, he flips out, and like, there's a couple things that I love about that. It's shot really, really cool. Like, it's a pretty static shot, but it's like you said, like, there's basically two cuts. And one is Smith is in the foreground, and like all these guys are behind him, and you very, very clearly see Leonora talking to the man. And then you sort of get the reverse of that, where she's in the foreground. And like, it's just such a simple, well, it's not simple, but it's a smart, uncomplicated, I guess is a better way to say it. Like, there's nothing really distracting or technically impressive going on in the frame other than the simple staging of where those people sit. But it creates that extra tension because there's all this distance between them, and you see it. And you see all these other dudes and lackeys, and you can feel the discomfort on them.
Yeah.
Of having to like watch this marital spat to the point where the dude that laughed got excused from the room.
Yeah.
It's basically just told, get the hell out. Like, and
then he tells everyone to get out at some point. He's just done with it.
But I like that they just go for it. It's like, I feel like in so many movies, like that's the kind of stuff that would have been done behind closed doors. He would have kept a polite face and ushered them out of the house. And then as soon as the doors closed, he would have turned on her, probably would have gotten physical. And that doesn't happen here. Like, it's all just straight emotional antagonism in front of others, and that to me is like, it was harrowing. Like, it hurts so much more, I think.
Well, I think you're right, and I think it's really illustrating who he is. He is absolutely the king of the mountain. There is no one even close to him.
Nope.
He can treat everyone like crap all day long. It doesn't matter because whatever he does, and that I'm sure that attributes to his entire personality. Yeah. All the way to the anxiety attack / heart attack thing.
He does seem to like that pinball machine that he has, though.
Pinball machine, yeah.
Okay, so it's very close around here where they kind of have it out, and it's basically the only thing that's going to work for them, because he's not going to give her a divorce, is she has to go away somewhere. Go to Miami. Go wherever you want to go.
Go on vacation. You're rich.
Yeah, because the thing is, you've got a taste of this lifestyle. You're not going to leave it.
Right.
So the only thing you can do is go away and enjoy the money that you married into.
Right. And he kind of reveals, I feel like, a little bit of a soft spot here. And tell me, maybe I'm off base, but when she brings this up, the way he talks about it, it sounds very much like he's very set in the fact that people want him for his money.
Yes.
And it's been that way for so long. And it's been the entire goal of his life. His dad gave him $4 million when he died or something. Like, left him $4 million. He turned it into 22, and he's going to turn it into 50 before he dies.
Yep.
And all anybody wants is my money anyway, and you got what you wanted. So he's as pissed off as anybody, but if he divorces her, then the shrink was right. And he loses control. Right. And like, that shrink is probably dead by now. That shrink is probably in a graveyard. But he not in his head.
Shrink is living and enjoying his life, I'm sure. Right. Thank God I don't have this guy as a client.
Forgot about Smith Ulrich.
Yeah.
So you do sort of get that little taste of, this is a human being, as twisted as he is. You can kind of see where he's coming from. Right.
She decides she's going to get a job. She finds an ad in the paper that there's a doctor's office hiring a receptionist in the east side of New York City, I believe, which I don't know my geography, but obviously is not the fancy West Side.
Although I would say, and I don't know much about New York or the history of New York in those terms either, but sometime toward the end of the 70s, you were moving on up if you were heading to the East Side. At least according to the Jeffersons. Yeah, she heads to a poor part of town to help with a doctor, to get a job in a doctor's office.
This is about, I think, right at about 35, 40 minutes here, and finally we meet James Mason. And that, again, if you're making a movie today and you got an actor that's going to have top billing, he or she is going to show up before 35 minutes of your movie, by hook or by crook, or you're going to get fired. So yeah, it's a very small office. It's two doctors. On the left side, you got a obstetrician named Dr. Hoffman, who is like a J.K. Simmons. Like, that's what I thought of. Like, he is the J.K. Simmons of 1949.
Yeah.
I'll have to look that actor up. Great though. I really liked him. And then on the right side, you have James Mason, the pediatrician. And so, they had this kind of like, I just thought, okay, they're playing this as a joke. Like, he's saying, well, over there, he brings kids into the world, and then they come see me when they're sick,
Yeah.
And so I thought that's kind of quaint and it's kind of neat. It actually ends up being pertinent to the plot later on, which I thought was really, really cool. Did you ask yourself, why is no one recognizing her as the wife of Smith Ulrich, if, in fact, that newspaper montage was as big of a deal as it appeared to be?
Well, I didn't, and here's why.
Okay. Because I did a little bit, but I got over it pretty quickly, but Go ahead.
Well, I didn't mainly because I felt like the people that she's going to see there...
What are you trying to say? The poor people don't read newspapers?
Poor people
you can say that.
Can't read. No, there were kind of two things. One, I didn't feel like either of those doctors would have cared anything about Smith Ulrich or society life or any of that.
Right.
So those guys would have been completely out. As far as patients in the waiting room and so on, that's a different story. But I also felt like, we've gone a few years. Like, I don't know, we haven't had a newspaper montage since they got married.
Right.
So as far as I know, it's just like, and again, if he's Howard Hughes and I had no idea about that watching the movie until you even brought it up. But if he's that reclusive, then maybe people haven't seen her for years, and so it's just not somebody they're used to looking at.
Well, and James Mason, Dr. Quinata, which I gotta say, it was like 10 minutes before the movie was over where I finally realized what his last name was because I saw it on the door. I'm like, are they saying Pinata? Crinata?
Larry Quinata.
Yeah, they should just call him Dr. Larry, but I like the name Quinata. I don't know what the origin is. He does mention that she looks familiar. He says something about, did you work in a hospital or something? There's a couple little things during her interview which I really liked. I think that was when you've got the kid in the background just blowing on one of those like old school like
whistles,
like non-stop in that scene, and
yes.
There's a lot of movement in it, and like she's just being kind of friendly with another little kid, and it's just kind of nice. But then when he's interviewing her, and James Mason is if you don't know James Mason, Kubrick's Lolita, he's in The Verdict, he's in a million things, but to me, definitely Lolita was one of the standouts. But this is way before that. Anyway, so he's younger than that guy, but still very, he's very, very formal. He's kind of just a formal guy, very, very British, very put together.
Yeah.
He's like asking her about like, well, okay, so how long have you been in New York? She says something about 10 months. He's like, okay, well, where have you been working? She's like, well, I haven't really been working. He's like, well, where have you been? She says, Long Island. And he's like, oh. It's like, I wrote, it's like, it's as if she was saying that she had cancer. That she was in Long Island. It's a really kind of great reaction. And then, she gets the job. She kind of has to beg for it a little bit, but because she doesn't have that sort of dictation training and like some of the actual just skills that she would need as a receptionist, which I think is that's good. That's reality based. He's not just hiring her because she's pretty and they sort of have a little spark at the beginning.
Yeah.
In fact, they don't. I think this relationship stays pretty professional for quite a while. But then there's some time goes by and they have their first big blow up where he finally is just like telling her, it's like, look, like, you've been here a couple of weeks now and your skills have not really improved at all. And I was hoping for more from you. And then he gets into this whole sort of riff about how she's too put together for their office. Like I wrote it down. He says, for Pete's sake, look at that hairdo. You're so fancy. You're scaring patients away.
Well, and in a lot of ways, I mean, that's Larry being the opposite of Smith.
Yeah.
And everything is very opposite. You live in a gigantic house with no one else but Smith. And then you go to Larry's office and it's packed with people and it seems tiny, and Smith wants you to be dressed up and be ready to wait on him hand and foot. And then this guy says you're too fancy. And, it was interesting. Yeah. It's kind of seeing the differences between those two places.
I really enjoyed that scene where he goes and calls on the girl. He's basically figuring out that this kid, the girl, has botulism, some form of food poisoning.
Botulism, yeah.
But that he didn't take it as seriously because her mother calls all the time, and it's somewhat of just a worrywart, and invents maladies for her daughter. But Leonora goes to the house, and they're there till like 2:00 in the morning, and they leave, and there's this conversation, and it's starting to be obvious that there's some maybe romantic interest between the two of them, but it's still, I don't know, it felt kind of respectful of the audience in those moments where, no, they're not madly in love with each other. They've only known each other for like 3 months, and they're working together like that. There's so many workplace romance stories that, like, I mean, yes, it does happen in real life, but it's somewhat of a rarity because it's not the best situation to meet somebody or fall in love with somebody. I don't think,
Well, and I think a lot of romances, the lesser romance movies tend to. It usually feels like the reason they fall in love with each other is because they're both so attractive,
right?
Or they're both so clever or something. Yeah. Whereas this one definitely feels a lot more organic. I mean, these are two people who are just sort of realizing they have a lot of the same ideas, and they're obviously attracted to each other, and they cure botulism together. These are all things you could build a life on.
And so I think maybe I skipped around a little bit, but yeah, Smith comes back. He finds her because, of course, he finds her. He knew where she was the whole time, and he gives a very heartfelt plea to have her back.
Yeah.
And he's in her apartment, and yes, he's critical of how she could be comfortable in such a tiny place of squalor. But like, he helps her fold the table, and like, he's gentle, and he's explicit with his faults and that he was wrong, and that he wants her back. And of course, what does she do, Craig? She accepts.
Of course.
Mistake number 7, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. It's a big one. But I mean, yeah, again, this is the relationship that she wants to work the most, because it's got that great money aspect.
Yep.
And she just has to have the love aspect, and then yeah. But she's still not completely dumb about it, It's not like she just immediately like jumps into his arms.
No, wait a second, Craig.
Oh.
Pretty much right after that, she sleeps with him.
She does, but I'm saying in that scene, it's not like, oh, you
no,
came
not in that
back.
scene. Yeah, I know.
So
no, but
at least, yeah. So
they wait till they get back to Long Island. Yes,
it's a long drive back to Long Island.
It really is.
A lot of talking you can do.
Yeah, but yeah, it's a really good scene. And then yes, unfortunately, right after that, you're cutting to her waking up in bed. It's clear that they've slept together. And she finds out that Smith is leaving. He had a trip planned for several days before he even came and asked her back. And so it's like this illusion that she had that maybe things would be different is immediately shattered. She calls James Mason back and asks for her job back. Or I think maybe he even asked her to come back first, because he definitely feels remorse about being so critical of her that she did quit. And she goes back, and then I think that's when sort of the botulism house visit happens. We got out of order just a little bit.
Yeah.
Anyway, doesn't quite matter because right after that, then there's this great little scene where is it late at night or early in the morning? I can't remember. I think it's after office hours, right? And so the Dr. Hoffman, the obstetrician, comes into his office, closes the door. You see that Leonora is thinking about something. She knocks on his door and goes in, and then you cut to her kind of getting dressed, tucking her shirt in, clearly having been on his exam table, and she's pregnant from her very brief visit with Smith.
That's right. Smith is not shooting blanks.
Definitely not. I really liked how they handled that transition. I did you know that that's what they were? Did not piece it together that I thought she was walking into that office to talk to him about Dr. Quinata, about James Mason.
Oh, okay.
About feelings that she had. I don't know. It's like my head's going in these sort of like romantic tropes, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you see the pregnancy coming?
I didn't.
Okay.
That is kind of weak because, we've just put her in the midst of an obstetrician and a pediatrician and all this life and family life and all this stuff that she wants. Like, we really should have seen that coming a mile away.
We should have. And it becomes, I think that's when the movie takes a real dark turn in a lot of ways. But man, this is all within 5 minutes of her finding out she's pregnant. We have a scene where she's at a bar with James Mason smoking and drinking.
Yeah.
So she's pregnant, she's smoking, she's drinking with a doctor.
With a doctor.
And so,
doctor approved.
Let's talk then about where it kind of goes from here, because you are building that triangle to a head. James Mason professes his love for her in a very James Mason way. It's not overly gushy or flowery.
Nope. It's pretty clinical.
It's very clinical, which is kind of fitting to his character.
Absolutely.
And man, that dance floor scene, that thing I think that's the best shot in the movie, basically.
Yeah.
It starts super, super close on the two of them. You're on the dance floor. You're right now. There's so many people coming in and out of frame right around them. It feels like they're going to bump. And then he pulls out. You pull back. You go behind a curtain, behind the band, and you're tracking with them. And then you meet up in them close. It's nuts.
That whole thing? Is that a wonder?
I think so. I don't think there's a cut in there.
Oh man, I didn't realize that.
It's almost like Smith is out of the picture a little bit here, but we know she's pregnant, and then I think the next time we see them is when Quinata, James Mason, shows up at the mansion on Long Island, and he comes in and does he realize? He does not realize that Smith is Leonora's husband, correct?
Yeah, he does not know that.
Yeah, he's like getting a drink or something, and he just kind of puts it out there that he knows exactly what James Mason is doing and that nothing's going to come of it, basically. And so, of course, James Mason feels betrayed because why didn't she say anything that she was married and married to this guy? But I like that. So he sees her on the stairwell and is like, meet me outside, or she says that or whatever, meet me around, in the garage. Mm-hmm. And so there's another really cool tracking shot there where like James Mason's walking outside looking for her, and then like he goes back in the garage and it's kind of following them. But again, I liked how that conversation was handled because clearly Leonora is insanely stressed about what is going to happen here, and like now she's sort of back in the clutches of this madman.
Yeah.
And he's saying, you know what, like, forget about me, forget about the fact that I love you and I proposed to you and you didn't tell me this, that you're married. I just spent 3 minutes with this guy. He is not good for anyone. Yeah. Like, you have got to get out of this. Like, go take care of yourself, take care of your baby, and this guy is dangerous. And that to me is like, yeah, that's a very mature way of handling that. Yeah. It basically, you have Smith come out and Leonora is forced to choose between the two of them. And that's kind of what it's building to.
Because like she's just trying to go up to bed, and he sits down on that bench, and he's just saying, "This is what I'll do. I want to basically I want to crush you. I want to win, and this is how I will win, is by if you leave, I'll take the child from you." And of course, she's not going to go for that.
No, and in fact, like he's basically saying, "I will get custody because I will pay people to say that you had an affair with Quinata, and that will be the way I will win custody in court." It's a pretty brutal speech. I mean, it is nasty. Like that's kind of the moments where I thought of Daniel Day-Lewis, that character in There Will Be Blood, like sort of the end of that movie. Yeah. And that's just this. I wrote down the line. He says, "I think now I hate you." I mean, that's such a terrible thing to say to somebody. That scene really just kind of, that shook my foundation a little bit. And then, but then I don't know. It's a weird kind of turn there when later she's asleep and here's this massive crash and he's calling her name. And like, I don't know, like to me, it felt a little bit like a horror movie because it was all built around sound and I didn't know what had happened. Like, what has this guy done? And like, I kind of thought, okay, he's drunk. He's breaking the dishes or something.
Yeah.
No. And like, she goes down and like, he's overturned the pinball table on himself, I guess. And
I assumed he had an attack and fell over and just grabbed onto it.
Definitely had attack. Yeah. That's probably what happened. I don't think the pinball machine fell by itself, although that would be kind of awesome. We just had a really bad game of pinball and just got mad at it. Yeah. But the glass is broken, and so like he's in a very bad state, and he needs a pill, the pill that will help him calm this attack.
Yeah.
And she won't give it to him.
Yeah.
And so she's eaten up by guilt. She kind of goes into shock. Doctors are called. Quinata shows up. He finds her. She's in a mad state. She thinks she's killed him and did it on purpose and left him there to die. He's saying, "No, actually, I think they're going to recover your husband, Smith." She then starts having terrible, what appears to be abdominal pain. And do you remember what he does at that point, Craig?
Well, aside from try to call someone.
Yeah, there's a moment before that where he pours her a drink, of course.
Yes. I didn't think about that.
Yes, of course. Here's what this pregnant woman needs in a dire emergency: a drink. Again, I love this. This is what do we do?
That was beautiful.
And then we cut to an ambulance, which I think is the only really, really poor choice of production design in the whole movie. That ambulance set looks like, it looks like somebody's living room or something that's just being like a flywall that's being vibrated.
There's sort of no curve up into the ceiling of the thing, so it's just like it's just a wall. It's like they might as well be in an 18-wheeler with a little window punched out or something.
And I don't think this is a period thing. I don't think an ambulance ever looked like the inside of an ambulance never looked like this. Smartly, the camera gets very, very close to the two of them.
Yeah.
James Mason is there for Leonora, and okay, this is where the movie is really going to either make or break people in 2015. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about how you sort of reacted and took in what's being said to her by James Mason, particularly in regard to the life that is in her stomach.
Yeah, so... And correct me if I'm wrong on this, because I was a little hazy going into the ending in the first place for some reason.
Because it didn't feel like an ending.
It did not feel like an ending.
No.
There was something sort of wrong with her, but I wasn't assuming that things were going to go very, very wrong. And so, and then I was a little bit more confused because, at least to me, that ending bit plays like, everything's working out. Like everything, it's played played like a happy ending. And so in some way it was not clear to me what exactly had happened because you don't see anything explicit whatsoever. You don't even see her. Well, do you?
No, not at the hospital, but in the ambulance, where she's at first almost appears to be unconscious. and he's talking to her about, it's kind of that you got to stay with me speech. But very, very specific about, you have to do this for yourself, Lee. Yes, your baby may die, but you have to live, because think of it, you will be free. You will be free from Smith, and you can finally live your life anew. He's saying all of that. You can be happy, but your baby's probably going to die. I mean, like, it's almost like an asterisk in that scene. And like, it's just kind of hard to take that in, because it just would not be played like that today. And then, yes, like, I think she definitely opens her eyes. She sort of turns her head into his body as they get closer and closer, and he's giving this speech. And then you cut to the hospital, and the other doctor, the obstetrician, is kind of walking out, and he's meeting James Mason and saying, yeah, she's okay. Premature birth, baby died. But then blah, 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 blah. Like, you can't stay in there more than 2 minutes, okay? And like, Smith is like sort of laughing. He walks into the room. Yeah, it's that total like shot. The door's open. Larry is laughing. Larry. And yeah, it's a cool shot that he's looking at her bedside table basically, or her bed, and you don't see her. But he's got a smile on his face. Like, yeah, you're walking to a room where she just lost a child, and you look like this could be the best day of your life.
And that's what's so interesting to me is in 1949, this movie comes out, and the pregnancy is treated from beginning to end like nothing but a problem. And from the as soon as she finds out that she's pregnant, she's miserable about it.
And understandably so, because of
no one ever. I mean, and you're at an obstetrician and a pediatrician's office. No one ever talks about, but at least you'll have a child, a beautiful child you can raise. No one cares. Like that baby. If that baby doesn't die, everyone will be very sad. And just knowing very, very few people who I know who have very unfortunately gone through miscarriages, losing a child like that, you're in for at least months of pure darkness.
It is interesting because it seems like a very happy or obvious choice would have been to let Smith die and the baby live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but
I mean,
and that's
right? Because
clearly a conscious choice, so that's really interesting.
Yeah,
because
she probably would have gotten his money, or at least a chunk of it, if he had died and had a baby.
I mean, that would be the easy, happy ending. Although I still, throughout the entire thing, I just purely believed that what we were getting out of that therapist at the beginning was, you don't have a heart problem. This is like psychosis. An anxiety thing. This is coming out of your mind, and it's like you're punishing yourself. So, oh man,
I was a bit blindsided by that ending, and it leaves a very curious color on the rest of the film. But in a way that is, I do think it's complex, and it's adult, and it's not easy. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely not easy, despite the fact that you do get the laughing James Mason and the smiling Dr. Hoffman, where it kind of feels like they were trying to somehow give you a satisfying, happy ending.
Well, and it's a very progressive movie, really.
For sure.
In a lot of ways. Surprisingly so. And I mean, and I guess it comes mainly from having Ulrich be, sort of the old-fashioned way to do things, maybe, and so James, Dr. Larry had to be a progressive character, a more progressive character, just about she can make up her own mind, and you shouldn't live just to marry someone, who has money, or just to marry someone at all. That shouldn't be your only goal in life, is to marry well, and that kind of thing, and so yeah.
One other final little bit of trivia about this movie. I think originally Ophuls was credited as Opals without the H, apparently because one of the producers thought that Ophuls sounded too much like Awfuls.
I was wondering why that was. Yeah.
I mean, which Ophuls, I guess, was a pseudonym anyway to start with. I think his name was Max Oppenheimer. So
still a pretty tight name for
what an interesting
director.
life. Yeah, interesting life these guys had to deal with studios and all that stuff going on at the time, and people like Howard Hughes producing and making movies.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts. I definitely think it's one to check it out. For various reasons. If you're into the filmmaking side of things, you got to see those tracking shots and stuff, and just how things are staged. There's always movement in the frame. Yeah, and as of today, it's on Amazon, and as we learn with Jamaica Inn, that can change daily. Jump on it.
Hey, Shawn, so did this movie spark any new ideas for you, or did it give you ideas on how this movie could be remade, rebooted?
I did start out thinking, oh, you know what, this could be remade. I like this kind of like setup for the girl that's getting involved with the rich guy and then the doctor and all that kind of. I like those worlds a lot. But yeah, by the end of it, I was like, no way. Like, I don't know. I just don't know how you would possibly remake this and be kind of true to what must have been in the novel.
Yeah.
So no, I'm passing out this week, Craig. Sorry.
No worries.
What about you? What you got for me?
Well, the main thing I kept thinking about, I mean, first of all, you have such a great setup at the beginning. It certainly wouldn't be an exact remake, but I would keep it in the same period. I would keep the charm school. I would keep the modeling of coats, which that stuff was really fascinating to me. But I think I would introduce the conspiracy of murder aspect. You would start off with, I would definitely cast Barbara Bel Geddes again if I could, because I love her.
Yeah.
But she's of course passed away. Rest in peace. But
I don't think it's a problem.
Always a problem, but eventually, hopefully, we'll overcome it.
No. What are holograms?
Oh man, at least that can't come soon enough. But yeah, we start off in that same world. She has the same attitude about it. It makes her feel cheap. She doesn't like it, but then she ends up marrying the really rich guy. And kind of what I'm thinking is, by making the choice to marry him, even though they're not in love, and I would probably spend a little more time on the relationship, she just forces herself down this path, chasing what she thinks happiness looks like or something, and it just keeps changing her until by the end, she's sort of the bad guy. Even if it's just to the point of deciding to murder him because she's gotten to the point where she's so hard about the whole thing that she really just wants the money. And that's kind of the thing. So then she kills him at the end. Maybe she wants the baby. So she gets pregnant. Then the second part of her plan is to murder him. And so, but then it ends up flipping and she loses the baby and he lives. And so it's kind of the same ending, but much darker.
You talking about that actually made me think of Gone Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that, the Fincher movie? Yeah, maybe there's a little aspect of that, of this movie kind of trickling down even into something like that. I like that. That's interesting. And it also made me think of, I feel like there's been a bunch of movies that have probably done the, oh, look at this happy marriage. This is going to be, I just met the man of my dreams. And then a year into the marriage, or not even that, like you suddenly realize I've married a psychopath. I like your pitch. I think, that's worth getting invested in.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'm always on board anytime there's like a plot to kill a partner that you can somewhat justify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like it if you can really, and I guess I can't help but think about something like Breaking Bad. I really love to be able to watch the journey from good guy to bad guy in all those little steps.
I'd love to see a draft by next week.
Not
so
a
that'd
problem.
be good. Let's get on it. Okay, cool. Well, anything else on this movie?
Not at all. Well, maybe one more thing. Shawn, what does the title mean to you in regards to this movie?
That she's caught in the relationship with Smith.
And see, and I think you're exactly right. I think it has a lot of different meanings, But as we've been talking, it kind of has kind of come over me that it's also sort of an ironic usage of it because going back to the headlines and everything, it's like she caught the millionaire, like she caught the man of her dreams. I was so biased about, it's called Caught because she's going to get caught in this crime that I just never thought about it again. So,
dude. I mean, the posters, there's definitely one where it's her looking down, it's painted, her looking down at Smith on the floor, and he looks dead. So it's, And then I guess the last thing I did want to, I've just failed to mention, but did you notice Barbara Billingsley in there?
Yes, in the department store.
In the department store?
Yeah, we both did. And we were like,
I was like, at first I thought, is that Lucille Ball?
Yeah, me too.
Oh my God. And then I was like, I looked it up and I was like, oh no, Leave It to Beaver's mom. And Airplane. I was like, I love her. Yeah. So that was kind of a nice little cameo there. I think she's got like one speaking line.
Different times.
Craig.
Yeah.
I think you need to talk to me about next episode.
Let's talk about the next episode, Shawn. All right, I've got a list of movies here.
Okay, I've heard of all of them, so I hope you have another list of movies.
Well, all right, I'll go to my next list,
okay,
second
good.
list. At the time of this recording, these can all be found on Netflix streaming. Let's kick it off. Shawn, have you ever heard of the movie Buffalo Soldiers?
I have, yes.
All right, good job.
Or am I thinking of Buffalo 66? I've heard of Buffalo Soldiers, yeah.
Who's in it?
Roseanne Barr?
No.
Roseanne Arnold?
No.
Okay. Just Roseanne?
No. None of those people.
Well, I don't know. If you want to press me on this, which I'm fine, we can do this. We can set a precedent right here and right now. I can't really say I know anything about the movie, but the title, I feel like I've heard of the title. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
But if you want to watch it, I cannot back it up at this point, Craig, is what I'm saying to you.
Well, off the record, we'll cut this part out.
We don't have to. I think we can make this...
Like, this is a thing I keep thinking about, is should it be something where you can immediately say, yes, I know what that movie is? And if you can't, does that count as... I don't know. Because the other thing about this movie is I can guarantee you, as soon as you see the poster, you'll probably be like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, I like doing those.
So at the same time, now that you said that you have heard of it, I feel like it's probably true. Okay. I don't know. What do you think? I have a whole list of stuff here.
Was this at the top of your list?
This was, this is the first one. I kind of figured you would know exactly what it was immediately.
God, I feel like I should.
Yeah.
I don't know. We can flip a coin. You want to do it?
Well, okay. Well, let me put this to you.
Is it different from some of the other stuff we've done?
What's that?
Is it different from some of the other stuff we've done, you think?
It's fairly different, yes.
Okay.
And well, here's the other question I was gonna put to you about the podcast when we do this kind of thing. Should the person calling them out, instead of just saying a title, should we say Buffalo Soldiers made in blah blah blah, starring blah? And then it's like, okay, no, I haven't heard of that.
Why don't we start that today, Craig?
Okay, let's do that.
I like that idea because, my memory is bad, and titles, they tend to sound like something, titles sound like titles, so they sound like something that you should have heard of. So I think maybe we're getting thrown up a little bit. I like this idea, Craig.
All right,
hit me with what you got.
Okay, Buffalo Soldiers, made in 2001, starring Joaquin Phoenix.
Wow. No, Craig, I don't think I've ever heard of this movie.
Wow.
And I'm embarrassed to say that because I love me some Joaquin. So This movie's on Netflix?
This movie's on Netflix streaming.
And that's what we'll be watching, and I look forward to talking about it next time on the podcast.
Fantastic. See you then.
I will, and as always, you know where to find us. We mentioned it at the top of the show. I'm not going to say it again, because come on, you want to go to bed. Until then, you know what? There's a good chance this might be dropping in 2016. So Happy New Year, everybody. If not,
Happy New Year.
just start right now. Your calendar starts today, 2016, whatever day this is.
Indeed. Today's the first day of the rest of your life.
Absolutely. All right, take care.
Take care. I don't know what I just said, by the way, at the end of that. Take care. Take care. All right.